Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and it is my absolute pleasure it's actually a minority the last month or so. I'm talking to another person in my same country as we all been in a different state. Mr. Jason Dunn, author, ultra endurance athlete, high performance coach, an all-round good bloke who, full disclosure, we both had some issues with technology this morning, but we're now working. Jason, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Darren, thank you, mate. Great to be here. I'm not sure who said I was an all-round great bloke, but that was very nice of them.
Yeah, that's something that's sort of ad lib. I had the I
Thank
had
you.
the introduction all down, but I thought, no, I got to add something. Particularly if you're up in the morning in Sydney where it's pelting down rain, and you still went for an early morning run, and I
Yes,
think you
indeed.
said to me, yeah, it's we don't rust, so it's just water. So
Exactly, mate.
get it
Exactly.
done.
Anyway, great to be here.
Likewise, really looking forward to this. You're a two-time author. Your first book, Unlimited: The Art of Being Limitless, was released a few years ago, and the new book, Greatness Doesn't Care: How You Become the Greatest Version of You, is coming out end of July, in Australia, and will no doubt be released around the world as well. Before we talk about some of the principles of greatness, because you have mentioned to me just before we press record that there's a 14 step, I guess, process or 14
Mhm.
components to becoming great. Where did it all start for you? Because you've mentioned to me that you've been in sales, you've been coaches of coaches of coaches, you're a high performance coach, an ultra endurance athlete. Where did it start, and how did you end up doing what you do today?
Okay, well, it started 62 years ago. Everybody might might want to settle down with a cup of tea, or maybe a strong drink, depending on the time of day. Yeah, 62 years ago, and in a nutshell, I grew up in the UK. I was obsessed, as are most young boys back then, sort of 50 years ago, with becoming a professional soccer player, or in Australia, soccer player, professional football player. And I guess, if you're in Australia, the World Cup's on at the moment, so you can
Mm,
get a sense around the unity that brings to our country. And so when you grow up in that environment, it is a dream. It is every lad's dream in the UK, and probably these days it's, girls as much as boys. So I grew up with that, and I played 4 or 5 games a week. At the age of 13, I was playing 4 or 5 games a week. I was playing, county, which is state rep. I've had for both schoolboy and Sunday league, as well as my local teams. And that was my dream. I got to the age of 15, and I was actually offered an apprenticeship with a first division club in the UK. Second division, which is like the first division now.
yeah.
And it was a dream come true. The club that offered me that apprenticeship was over 2 hours away on the train on the south coast, and I was in the midst of coming up for my first round of O-level exams, and I had this confronting decision to make, and it was roll the dice, basically give up my school studies, which I'm not sure my parents would have allowed me to do anyway, and go on this ride. And it would have been a huge risk back then because they take on 40 players
Mm.
and perhaps two make it through, and then you sort of spend 2 years cleaning mud off professional footballers' boots and all that. It's very different these days, but um, yeah, so it was a big risk, and I had to make this decision with my head as opposed to my heart, and I declined the offer. And pretty much simultaneously, that it was such a huge. I started to feel regretful, but I had to focus on my school studies,
Yeah.
which I did, and I worked pretty ardently on my school studies. And but at the same point, I think I kind of went off tangentially And I was, going out to the pub. I'd nick off with my schoolmate and go down to the pub for a couple of beers and a game of Space Invaders. At 15, and 15, 16, started to sneak out and go to the pub. I started smoking cigarettes and doing, all sorts of things I probably shouldn't have been doing. So that's kind of how life started. I gave that up and moved to Australia when I was 17. In the space of a year, it was my first, I nearly died which was my first of four serious accidents that nearly killed me. And I've been hospitalized 35 times and I've broken close to 45 bones, had all sorts of conditions you can't imagine. And I did a whole bunch of things. When I was 18, I bought two properties in Sydney on my own. I basically borrowed 100% for one, 80% for the other. I started one of the first video shops in Australia. Yeah, and I nearly died. So it was kind of a pretty big welcome to 18 year. And I trundled on in life and doing the things we do, progressing my career. I really didn't do a lot of sport. I played a bit of soccer, but I'd come off at halftime and have a cigarette. And I worked pretty hard on my career and started a family. But my I was often taking the easier path, and well, I'd work hard, but then it'd come to something that required real courage and a decision to make, go do something that required significant discretionary effort, and
Mm.
I would take the easier path. And my regret snowballed after quite a few beers, especially in the industry I was in. I would sort of tell people that I could have been a professional soccer player. And I got to the point I looked in the mirror and I just didn't like myself because I was saying it out of bravado and ego. And you know what? Guess what? I didn't do it.
Mm.
And I just knew I needed significant change. I had had purpose in life, but I didn't really have a purpose just for me. And I had this overwhelming sense of regret that I'd wasted opportunities and I was going to continue to do so. So I knew I needed a change. I really wasn't quite sure. And just by chance, a friend of mine who I work with at a bank caught up with one day, said, when I was 34, 35, just about turned 35, and said, "Hey, Jace, we're going to do a corporate triathlon. And you want to do it? There's a couple of us doing it already." And I went, "Oh, yeah, okay, what's a triathlon?" And he said, "It's a swim, bike, run, but there's three of us." And foolishly, I didn't ask what I was going to be doing. I actually just assumed I'd be running. So off I chuffed and started doing a bit of running training, tried to cut back on the cigarettes a little bit. But yeah, the run was 3K. So I was quite capable of doing that, even if I probably didn't train too much, even though I liked the couch. And so that's what happened. A couple of weeks later, we caught up for a cup of coffee and said, "Jace, how's the training going?" I said, "Yeah, it's pretty good. I reckon I'm going to nail the run." He said, "Well, what about the swim and the bike?" And the color just drained from my face and I felt nauseous in the stomach. I knew what was coming. I said, I can't swim, mate. And I haven't ridden a bike since I was 12, like up and down the street. And I just felt sick. And he looked at me and goes, "Well, that's okay, And they said, "Come on, you can do it." And I just knew in that moment it was a small choice that I needed to make. And I want to make this point that often transformation begins with one small choice. Everyone's looking for the panacea, they're looking for
Yeah.
the silver bullet, but there isn't one. It's just literally, a small decision based on some other things which I'm going to talk about. And you just keep making those small discretionary decisions. So
Mm.
anyway, so I knew I needed to do some training, otherwise I was probably going to drown and die, which was my greatest fear. So I literally had this deep fear of I couldn't swim because I'd grown up in the UK. I could probably swim across the width of a pool if, I had to save my life. And so I rocked up to the swimming pool a couple of days later in Brisbane. I sat outside and it was dark, it was 6 p.m. and this battle raged. I sat there for 20 minutes
Yeah.
and a battle rage within me, voice of reason going, "Yeah, come on, man, it's too hard. The pool's going to be cold, chlorine, it's going to be horrible. You can just go home. We can pick this up in a couple of days, just whatever." But I knew, I didn't know the full significance, but I knew that I had to make a courageous decision. And so I did. So 20 minutes later, I turned the car off, in I went. I managed to swim 25 meters I couldn't put my head underwater. And then I sort of gasped for air up the other end for quite a while, and I swam 25 back. And it was small, but I just felt amazing. I just suddenly had this, sense of euphoria that I could
Yeah.
actually do this. And so that's what I did. And I put together a plan and I kind of slowly worked up the distance and rocked up on race day, stood at the front, on Noosa River on the sandbank, 150 people in my wave. I was at the front because I was a fast runner. In I went, really cocky. In I went, swam away. By the time I got to the 50-meter buoy to sort of go sideways, I'd been swum over by everyone. I think I was gasping for air. I turned on my back like a turtle, kind of gasping for air, kicking my feet. I thought, oh, I'd just have a look and sort of see where I am. And I realized that there was no one behind me. I was dead set last. So basically, I don't know, I just went, you got to keep going. And I did. I survived, only just came out of the water last, pretty embarrassing, but I felt pretty good. And then, yeah, I finished. I made it up to about 10th place from
Yeah.
150th place. And the feeling was, yeah, it was euphoric. And the dopamine, the adrenaline, everything. I just absolutely loved it. So I was floating around for a couple of days, feeling very victorious and pretty good about myself. And then it sort of started to wear off. And I go, what am I going to do now? Like, I've got to do something. I've got to do something with this. And I, thought about it. And maybe it was about 10 days later, I was sitting on my couch, smoking a cigarette, having a cup of coffee. As you do in those days, you sat inside your house and smoked. And I watched the Hawaii Ironman Wide World of Sports. Sorry, watched the Hawaii Ironman on the Wide World of Sports. And back then it was kind of this curious,
Mm.
Herculean event, but almost a novelty. And now it's, probably the sort of premium, preeminent endurance event on the planet. And I said to myself, yep, I'm going to race an Ironman and I'm going to race enough. I'm going to qualify for the Hawaii Ironman World Championships. And that's how it all began. And so the challenge, and this is the challenge, whether you're a sales leader or you're in business or in life, is often something, if you can set really big and meaningful goals. And I'd set this for 5 years ahead,
Yeah.
but often without, and I'm going to talk about the things you need to put in place to gain the confidence, often that gap is so large that it becomes demoralizing, it becomes deflating and demotivating because you look at this goal and you go, how on earth am I going to achieve that?
Yeah.
And so when you're in the minutia in the day you're in, you're trying to do something that's going to take you towards there are thousands of steps. And if on that day you're not feeling particularly good, it just becomes, catastrophic almost. And
Mm.
often that's why people give it up. So that's what I set about doing, 14 to 16 times each distance. I'd have to go fast, very fast in my age group to qualify, for the Hawaii Ironman. And that's what I set out to do. And and so the journey, so the life and the sort of completely different pathway began.
And if you hadn't have taken that, because it would have been, and as I'm listening to this, was it a serendipitous moment where you just happened to come across this person and said, "Hey, we're doing a corporate marathon or a corporate
Yeah, it
triathlon. How
was.
about you? How about you come and join us?" And you're saying,
Yeah,
"Triathlon."
absolutely. Absolutely. So, often finding your pathway or your purpose is sometimes it's just opportunistic, sometimes it's luck, sometimes, you create it. But either way, it comes down to making a decision
Yeah.
and having and acting with courage and then making many, 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 many more decisions. So I think if I can sort of continue, if that's okay,
Yeah,
is,
absolutely.
when greatness doesn't care. The objective for me was to create a framework of what I have found and what I've observed and studied in other people who've done extraordinary things, far more extraordinary than me, that to put it together so that any human being anywhere on the planet can pick it up and go, right, that's where I'm stuck. That's the thing that I need to master, or at least need to start to get going on and master
Mm.
while I do some other things. So the very first step to greatness and maybe, sorry, if I can just back this up a little bit,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
greatness is not comparison. Comparison is the killer of greatness, you know, the killer, it's the thief of joy. Greatness is achieving or accomplishing something that requires you to overcome struggle and adversity that brings meaning to your life. And it isn't a goal, it isn't a destination. As I have found, it's continual and perpetual. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you keep uncovering. The more you do, the more, and the more you believe, the more you uncover. And for me, at 62, it just keeps uncovering things. So greatness is simply whatever it means to you. It's about continually becoming better than yesterday.
Mm,
And the antidote to all the other things like fear and courage and setbacks is purpose.
mm,
So whilst I'd set this huge, great big goal, which if I eventually achieve that goal, I'd have to go find some other goals. My purpose I thought about it a lot, and my purpose evolved into actually proving to myself what I was capable of and how far I could push myself instead of limiting myself. And so that's why I call the first book Unlimited, because
yes.
it's about how you unlimit your mindset. So that became my purpose. And that purpose literally has been the same for the last 27 years. I mean, it has adaptations and goals that spin out of it,
Mm,
but that's been my purpose ever since. And it pervades every element of life. And as you know, I've been in sales and sales leadership for many, many decades. And, you know, I've led teams, I've trained people, I've coached coaches, I've coached regional leaders. And it's the one thing, it's one of the things that I absolutely dearly love. So the first thing you got to do is go find your purpose.
yeah.
And if I can give an example of that, and let me talk about that in terms of physical disciplines. Most people, many, a majority of people on this planet set goals as a New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the four top New Year's resolutions in terms of January? What do you reckon they are, Darren?
Well, it's losing weight,
Yep,
probably drinking
spot
less,
on. Yep,
maybe finding a new job,
yep,
and maybe either improving relationships or something to do with
yeah,
relationships as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, they're all in there. The top four. Top three of the top four are health related.
Mm,
So losing weight is absolutely generally, that's probably number one.
yep.
But, becoming healthier, becoming fitter, maybe they set themselves some goals around, running a 10K or a marathon or doing something. And then the other one is finance related. So,
Mm,
it's improving wealth. So they're the biggest goals. And as you well know, 90% of humans fail. They don't achieve their goal that year. 70% have given up within the first month by the end
yep.
of January. And here are what I believe align to those steps to greatness, why people, do not succeed or they fail. And by the way, failure is absolutely necessary, but you don't want to start out setting yourself up for failure. So it's purpose. And I want to lose 5 kilos is not a purpose. It's a
Yep.
it's a small goal. It's probably more related to how someone looks. So it's more about appearance as opposed to health. And so I would turn that into, my purpose is to, um, my purpose is to feel the best that I've ever felt or feel better than I have been feeling. I want to be fit. I want to feel energized. I want to feel full of life. I want to do all these things with my kids and my family. And I want to live a longer, healthier life. That's a purpose.
Mm,
That should run till when you're 80 or 90 or
yeah.
whatever. But losing 5 kilos is it's a great thing, but it's pretty shallow in terms of motivation. So when the going gets tough, and it will, then that's why it falls over. That's probably the first reason. The other is, the other things are the next step to greatness is courage. And most of us live our lives impacted in some way by fear. fear can become debilitating. So fear stops most people from becoming the greatest version of themselves, whether the fear is real. Well, it's real. If you think it's real, it's
Mm.
real. And I talk a lot about how you can put fear of something into perspective so you can kind of quickly move on. So courage, mindset, planning, discipline, they're kind of the first five, and they're probably
Mm.
almost the biggest five. So planning, and this relates to sales leadership, it relates to life, it relates to, personal fitness goals. Um, so for example, the 5-year goal that I had to, you know, qualify for and race the Hawaii Ironman, that had, my math's a bit slow this morning, that had 17 or 1,800 days in there. There's a lot of hours in
It is.
17 or 1,800 days. So what you've got to do is you've got to organize yourself to prioritize what's the most important and to start to build belief, by the way, is another step to greatness. So belief is
Mm.
essential because it provides, clarity and motivation, especially when things get tough. Belief is about building an evidence base that you are capable and you are on track. And it's the same in sales. So I did a strategic plan for 5 years, and then I designed what I call a 90-day high performance plan, which I use and have used constantly in every aspect of my life, particularly in sales leadership and in
Yeah.
with salespeople. And that basically what that does is a kind of rolling 90-day plan where you set yourself goals and milestones, but you provide the clarity around the inputs that are required to reach each of those goals and milestones. And this thing, you keep reviewing and keeps rolling over. But what it does is it sets milestones along the way that are a lot smaller than the huge, great big goal that you
Mm.
have. And when you do that properly, and you certainly you do it in sales, it's absolutely critical because there's a lot of specific activity that's required to get an outcome. What you do is it provides you with the confidence that if you just get up every day and do what you plan to do as part of this plan to get the outcome, you can literally sometimes you bring that huge goal in as an incentive, but mostly you just get up and do what you said you're going to do,
Yeah.
without excuses. And I got to the point where there've been some pretty brutal things have happened, and I'd be had family, I'd be training for an Ironman, and I'd be on a plane 2 or 3 times a week. But I always found a way, and all those hospitalizations, I always found a way. I just
Mm.
did not accept an excuse, and just kept getting up, kept getting up and doing it. So there's some horror stories in there around some things. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't encourage you to do this at home. This is a this is a safe environment here, but yeah, you can. It's whatever your mindset is the most powerful thing. Whether you're looking after clients and selling, whether it's your family, personal achievement, your mindset is that's your either, your greatest asset or potentially your greatest weakness or liability. But you can change every element of it. And I
Mm.
I have experimented for decades with my own mind and helping other people around, giving them tools, techniques to be able to overcome anything in the moment. And you know, you can influence yourself to accept anything. So
Mm.
you struggle if you're going to grow, if you're going to be better than yesterday, you're going to be, pushing it a little bit, maybe not a lot, but a little bit, or maybe you are going to be, pushing yourself a lot, and you're going to be outside of your comfort zone. Life is struggle.
Mm.
You know what? Life does not, if life doesn't have struggle, it doesn't have any meaning. It's
That's
as
it.
simple, it is as simple as that. And you will fail, and you will fail many times. And I have failed epically, like on the biggest stage, on the world stage. I've failed in a world championship because I was sick and I nearly drowned. And but if you can accept that those things are inevitable, then you become far more prepared and comfortable with them. And you can, fine tune your brain to actually welcome struggle.
Mm.
In the moment, you can actually recognize it for what it is. And that that mindset enables you to remain as positive as you can be and as motivated as you can be. Let me give an example. So when I went switched from Ironman to just running, which were kind of switched around about 44 to just running because I was a better runner than I was probably as an Ironman or triathlete.
Yeah.
And I decided whilst working full time, I was going to try and compete at an elite level. And so I would have at least one run a week where I would run up and down a single hill for 6 hours. So 1.5 Ks up, 1.5 Ks down. Didn't matter if it was 35 C or 40 C degrees C. I would run up and down this thing. And because I believed if I did it alone and if I did something really monotonous and boring, that I could, by the time race day came and there's the excitement and you're somewhere in the world and you're running over mountains and all these people, it elevated it emotionally. So I would do the boring stuff repeatedly, and I'd run up and down this thing for 6 hours because that was in my plan. Let me tell you, out of the 11,500 training sessions I've done over 25 years, I have not missed a single one unless I was in hospital
Yeah.
or unless I was just brutally ill or broken or whatever. And so I've run up and down this thing. Some days, you've run 150 Ks Monday to Friday. Saturday you have off,
Yeah.
and Sunday you do the 6 hour run. You could be running up the fourth time and you just feel stuffed.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're thinking, you have to work with your mind to think, I've got to do this thing another 16 times up and down after this. And life is like that because there are days when, you have this amazing purpose and these goals and you just feel like crap. You do not want to do it. And success is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it until you
Mm.
do. I've lived by that philosophy or that mantra again for decades. So anyway, so how do you deal with that? Well, what you have to do is you have to turn off your thoughts about what you know you have to do, because all you have to do is run up this one time
Yeah.
and then you can review it. And so
Yeah.
that's what I would do. And the other thing so I also, when my head said, your head's go, oh, this is hard, just go home. Like, you don't have to do this. It's no, it's that voice of reason. You don't have to do this. It's hard. I would tell myself instantly, I'd smile.
Yeah.
Smile is an antidote to anything, pretty much. I would smile really broadly, and that sense or that feeling would go. But I would also tell myself that the only way I could accomplish and find out what I was capable of was to struggle.
Mm.
And in this, it was physical and mental struggle. So I actually would say to myself, I'd switch it around and go, you need this.
Mm.
This is what you need for this to be meaningful. This is what you need to become better than you were yesterday and to go and find out what you're capable of. And so that's how I removed words like hard, can't, disappointed, and so on. I removed a bunch of words from my mind as much as I could in my
Yeah.
vocabulary. So I don't say them unless I say, you've got to work hard. But in terms of this is hard, because that influences your mindset. So go and chuck out the words that serve no purpose and get rid of them.
Mm.
If they're negative and toxic and they drag you back and they impact your mindset, get rid of them.
It's a fascinating study because it would have been, as you said, going up and down a 1.5 kilometer hill for 6 hours. When you begin that, you're thinking, oh my God, there's so much. I don't really want to do this. But
Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah.
saying, well, it's the next step. It's the next step I take. And you broke it down as, so well, I'm going to get to the top, then I'm going to review it. And then I'm going to get to the
Yeah.
bottom, then I'm going to review it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like saying you've got this big goal you've got to achieve, but you
Yeah.
disassociate from the outcome of achieving that and say, the only
You
thing I've got
do.
to do is the next component. That's the next step. It's the
Uh,
next
uh,
call I make. It's the next
abs
100 meters that I
Absolutely.
run.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's 50 meters. I mean, I've done races where I've just wanted, in the mountains, and I've just given myself a goal of running, a spot, the fourth tree.
Yeah.
and I'm going to run to that bit, and so on and so on and so on. So that again, that's how you influence your mindset. And of course, probably a fifth step to greatness is discipline.
Mm,
Discipline pervades every element of our life. People often believe that discipline is being rigid and structured, and you have no spontaneity, and have no freedom. It's the opposite. Discipline maximizes and prioritizes your time around the important things that will get you or your family or your business somewhere, and it frees up time. Disciplined people get things done.
mm,
They have more free time, and I love the Stoic philosophy on discipline, which is kind of the bedrock of Stoicism. Discipline is the mastery of self,
mm.
and you cannot influence, change, impact the world outside you unless you can do that inside you. And that's why they believe that was so important. So if I could describe discipline in a few sentences, discipline is they believed, and I believe, is the alignment of wisdom and action. Wisdom and action. So
Okay.
if I take that back and you think about this progressively and logically, you've got a purpose which drives you. It, will get you through the toughest times. You got a plan which you sat down calmly and figured out and said, you know what? Well, this is what I need to do to get to where I need to be. That's wisdom. Discipline is not just doing things, rigidly without knowing what's really important. That's the
Yeah.
wisdom. It's recognizing, and in sales, I mean, I've obviously been in sales for decades, and I see people, busy doing stuff that won't make any difference,
Mm,
busy being busy because they haven't taken the time to clearly think and plan around what will generate an outcome.
yeah.
What will enable me to do this in 3 or 6 months' time in my business, in my sales career. So wisdom is figuring out what you really need to do. And then discipline is literally the action to do what you
Yeah.
know super important. And the confidence on the days when you don't want to do something because you feel like crap or you're tired or whatever, emotionally you're low, whatever reason, we all have those. I have lots of those,
Yeah.
but I change that. There's never a day where I stay in that zone if I don't wake up feeling too good or whatever, because discipline is showing up because you know something is really important
Yeah.
and doing it. That is just no matter how you feel. That's the essence of discipline.
Because you've made it a priority. And it's interesting when you talk about sports people that might be talented, but they may not necessarily have the discipline to go with that talent. They're often the ones that are left
Yeah.
behind and will be surpassed by
Absolutely.
people with
Yeah.
less talent.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had talent. I had talent as a young boy playing football and other sports, and that part of that talent was mindset because
Mm,
you know, I grew up. I was nurtured, well, not nurtured, it was strongly encouraged to be successful and with ego and, to try and be the best and so on. And you know what? That actually damaged me. I mean, some elements of that were really good. I grew up with my grandparents, my parents, you work hard. That's what you do
yeah.
in life. You don't get anything unless you work hard. But the ego part will kill you. I've
Yeah.
worked for a long time to try and to try and temper my ego. And over the last, 5 to 10 years, and even the last 5 years, that's improved massively, and you take accountability.
Mm,
So ego, yeah. I mean, ego will motivate you a little bit, but that, if you've got a lot of it, then yeah, it's not about this. And I used to compete to try and win,
yeah. Yeah.
and I would compare myself to other people, but it didn't matter, and it doesn't matter. And so that is, I think, the thing, again, in business or in sales, we can feel demotivated when we look at people that are doing, smashing it, getting exceptional results, and it's so far away from where we are
Mm,
that we can find that comparison literally stops us in our tracks.
Yeah.
It impacts us. It will never enable us to be our best. So don't compare yourself. It isn't about winning. If you're going to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That is probably the most important measure.
And you know what? That takes discipline, Jason, because if you look at
Mm.
social media or the wider media,
Yeah,
what is it
yeah,
trying to it's trying to create? It's trying to create comparison. It's kind of
it
trying to
is.
create either rightly or wrongly division. And people who are susceptible to that sort of stuff say, "Oh, I'm on this path, and look at that person. They're no more talented than I am, but they're so
Yeah.
far further advanced than I am."
Ab Absolutely. And if you don't manage with disciplined social media, it will chew up your life. It's
Mm,
so toxic. And I actually didn't use until, one of the things, to me, I talk about a lot about courage and fear. And we all have them. I hadn't until about 3 years ago, other than LinkedIn, because I had to in business.
yeah,
And even then it was kind of pretty, there's a front that you put on. I wasn't on Facebook. Well, I had a Facebook account with 10 friends and I never went on it. And I didn't even know what Instagram was. I did just, but I wasn't on there. But for me to get my story out there, to get Unlimited out there, because I wasn't backed by a publisher, now I have a wonderful publisher and I have one of the distribution publishing by one of the top publishers in the world. I had to get out there. I wasn't going to spend money on advertising. I had to connect with people on Facebook and LinkedIn. Sorry, Facebook and Instagram. And that was confronting for me because I'd kept my life pretty private.
yeah,
And if you put yourself out there, which you have to do, to people that aren't in such a good place, it will feel like, that's ego and boastful, and it wasn't. But some thought it was. And I struggled with that for a while. I took that really personally until I rethought and went, you know what? You don't know me. You're probably, and I've always spent my time trying to understand people rather
yeah,
than judge them. So I understanding where they were coming from. And so my responses changed rather than trying to validate or demonstrate or, I would just go, hey, thanks, Darren. I appreciate your opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own.
yeah,
And look, I hope you have a great day. And
yeah,
I never respond any other way. Often people, they completely change their tune because
yeah.
they've been listened to and because they actually, they wanted to be angry and pick a fight. And I just wasn't prepared to do that. So you have to manage social media and what you see is uh, everybody basically they put out they put out what they want people to see. They put out
Mm,
their happiest party, and they uh, they put out whatever they want you to see. They're always happy. They're somewhere in the world, or they're doing something, or they're an amazing restaurant, or whatever. But that's a snippet. Most of our
yeah.
lives are not like that.
No.
And if they were, you know what? It'd be awful because that would be the everyday and the ordinary. And it would be awful because we need normal. We need to be comfortable and happy in our normal. And then the rest are just special things. So if you spend your life looking forward to something, once it comes, it's the dopamine, it's the anticipation. It comes and it goes quick, and then what are you left with? I heard one of the most, meaningful things I ever heard someone say was at a conference about maybe it was 35 years ago. And they said, by the time you get, if you don't like, by the time you get to 70, you will have lived 10 whole years of Mondays.
10 of
And
his
if you
Mondays.
ask a 70-year-old if they, would like 10 years of their life back, and most people would probably do anything to be 10 years younger
Yeah.
at the age of 70. So you have that choice. A Monday is a day, is a day, is a day. You can change how you feel about Mondays. And that's every day is a gift. That's one of my
Mm.
absolute favorite sayings. Most of my posts end with every day is a gift because it is. And all you have today is today to make a difference. That's it.
And it's the perspective, isn't it, that you put to it. And like thinking about people who will complain, who will judge, you can't control that. But
You can't. You
and
can't.
as part of the courage, and just talk a little bit about as you're setting big goals, and you could be as a salesman, it could be as an ultra marathon runner, it could be as a publisher or an author, putting out big goals and doing something that perhaps other people maybe internally wish they would have done or would do or have done, but they
Mm.
didn't. And
Mm.
so they start to criticize.
They
Now,
do.
you were talking about, every day is a great day and it's a gift, and having everybody
Mm.
say, thinking about, well, have a great day anyway. Can you just talk a little bit about the journey? Because that does take courage when you are putting yourself out there, where there are people that don't agree for whatever reason, which is probably more
Mm.
ego driven for them rather than it is for you.
Mm.
How do you go through that, particularly if you're in an environment where perhaps you have a certain reputation that has to be quote unquote
Yeah.
maintained?
Yeah.
How do you get through that sort of stuff?
Well, I think what you do, I mean, purpose, as I said, is the antidote to everything, So in all your difficult and challenging moments, if your purpose, if you frame it in a really in an emotional, meaningful way, then it becomes the antidote. So that means you go back to your purpose. When everything is difficult, you in your quiet moments, you go back to your purpose
Mm,
and you're really clear about why you're doing something.
mm,
You're really clear. And it's the antidote, it's what keeps you going. So for me, to be the best that I could be, to find out what I was capable of in any aspect of life, I have to accept and work with and face the challenges that are in front of me. So I just know
mm,
they're going to come.
mm.
And let me give you, and so for me, did I believe 5 years ago that I would write two books? And one is one is going to be in every bookstore in Australia in 3 weeks. And, when I used to fly through the airport as the CEO and you'd grab a book because you really need something to read or you're going on holiday or whatever. Okay. Did I think 5 years ago I would have a book sitting on the shelf there? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So it's not that I didn't believe. At that point I couldn't see it.
Mm,
And what I'm trying to convey is that things just open up when you believe and when you unlimit your mind, things open up. They just do. And I don't believe any of the things that are happening now 5 years ago would happen. And so if I can convey that to anyone, and you've got to kind of take a leap of faith with that, and you've got to do a lot of things. You've got to get up every day and do what you say you're going to do.
yeah, yeah.
But anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible.
And that's what I want people to think about, particularly if you're in a sales role right now and
Mm.
or you're thinking about moving into a sales role.
Mm.
You might look at people who are successful, you might look at people who've been doing the role for 5, 10, 15 years and think, my God, I could
Yeah.
never be like that. Well, the question is, don't compare yourself to another person. Think about what can you bring to the table and what's going to make you different
Yeah.
and how you
Yeah.
can continue to deliver value to others. Um,
Absolutely.
it's the world is your oyster.
It is. And Darren, I clearly remember times in my life having very specific thoughts related to where I was and where someone else was or a business many times, many times, and obviously being younger, you're trying to save and invest and you look at other people, they've got a big house and millions, you go, how on earth, many, many things. And so again, purpose will drive you. If
Mm,
you have a plan, you follow it. Absolutely anything is possible. And that's where your mindset becomes and where your belief is
mm,
that I can do anything.
yep,
And that is once upon a time for me, maybe decades ago, that would have been an arrogance thing. But, for decades, it hasn't been. It's just this is this quiet belief in myself and I package up that you've got to package it when you fail, when you face struggle, you kind of quickly got to analyze it and go, what does it mean? What
mm,
happened? What else can I do next time? And go, this is just another learning step towards me finding my own greatness, whatever
yep,
that greatness might be.
yep,
And and I will not let comparison take that away. I mean, let me give you an example. I couldn't, like as I said, I couldn't swim at all at age 35. I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. And if I'd compared myself with, the elite Ironman, athletes on the planet, I'd be gone. But I slowly built that confidence. And I remember when I got to Hawaii, um, and I got there, and there were some absolutely devastating things that happened along the way in terms of life-threatening accidents. Once I qualified, but I forgot to tick the right box on the form 6 months before, and the world body wouldn't let me go. One time, unbeknownst to me, because you don't know exactly where you are, after racing for 10 hours, even in a race, I was 12. The person in front of me in my age group was 3 seconds ahead of me in the finishing chute. I didn't know they were going to be the last one to qualify.
Wow.
Heartbreaking things. But,
Three
I went to a
seconds.
3 seconds and I went to a world championship and raced for Australia. I went to duathlon and long distance world championships and then the Ironman world championships. And I went to France. It was in Nice. And I got terribly sick, like terribly, terribly sick after training for a year. And I had to be pulled out of the water and rescued 100 meters in. I was drowning. And I stayed there all day. I was heartbroken, but I bottled the feeling. I knew that this would drive me through so much adversity. I bottled it and said, I'm going to learn from this. This will count. So failure and struggle, especially failure, I've always, utilized that to make it be
Mm,
meaningful and count, not to let it beat me. And then sometimes, you get the imposter syndrome. When I qualified for Hawaii, I'm there and I'm running, a week before I'm running down Ali'i Drive, that famous finish. I'm going, wow, I am here. I am here. I'm 43, 42, 43. So, I'm kind of well past it and as I'm watching guys that are my heroes, the greatest, these are the greatest athletes on the planet, running the other way. I'm going, and should I really be here? Should I? But I don't. But I went, you know what? Shit, yeah, you should. I've earned this. I have earned this. I have persevered. I've struggled. I've had thousands and thousands of hours, of intense training. I deserve to be here. And so, yeah, and then I started running because I'm a better runner.
mm,
And then I really was trying to sort of make it at elite level. And I got a silver medal at the Australian 100K road championships when I was 47, and then the following year when I was 48, I'm racing blokes, people half my age that didn't drink a lot, didn't smoke, as I had done. And I figured that was, for me uh, that was my greatness. It
mm,
didn't matter whether that was my greatness. I persevered and um, I stuck it out. I deserved that. So even now, look, even now, as I just said, I still because I have great, but I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Lisa and I will sit down and talk about what's coming up, and I go, is this real? Like, am I going to be in all these bookstores and then on a billboard in New York, later in the year and the, North American and UK release, am I really here?
yeah.
Is this really me? What's going to happen? Um, so yeah, I think when you have humility and you're a bit humble, which I've learned to be, then that imposter syndrome comes in. But it's when it happens to anyone, if it happens to you in sales or in business, you just need to sit down quietly and
Mm,
reflect on what you did to get there.
yeah.
And on some of the kind of softer topics, if you like, um, stillness and presence are two of the key 14 steps. Because without stillness, you can't plan, you can't reflect, you don't have quiet moments. If you don't have presence, and if you're so focused on goals and achieving things, if you don't
Mm,
have presence, well, then what's the point?
yeah.
Days go by, every day goes by, and you don't appreciate, you don't live in the moment, you don't live with the people that are around you, you don't connect with friends, you don't connect with community.
Yeah.
And and can I tell you the last step in greatness doesn't care is probably where I think I've probably learnt the most about myself. That's vulnerability.
Yeah.
And because the way I was brought up, the way I've lived my life, the tough stuff that I have had to do, and I've had to do that in business, I've had to do it with a couple of businesses, that were broken, and save a couple of hundred jobs. I would never have been equipped to do the things in business unless I'd gone down this pathway and done
Mm,
the things that I've done. But we also want to, if we're a leader, you want people to think, the kind of society tells us that you should believe, people want to believe that you're in control, you're in charge, you're confident, things are going well, all that kind of stuff. And so I did that. But what people wanted was to see that you were human and you were
that's it.
vulnerable. And, if you're not vulnerable and you're not confident in yourself, you can't recognize what you do wrong or not so well, or when you stuff
Yep.
up and say sorry. And, so what you think you should be is actually, is not what you should be. Well, you should
Yeah.
have that, but you got to be vulnerable. So I've learned more about myself being vulnerable in the last 3 years than probably most of my life. So that learning and that self-development and that betterment continues. It doesn't make you better than other people, it just makes you better than you were. And
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 that's the
it
whole
just
thing.
keeps going. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and whether you listen to this as a salesperson, a sales leader, or an entrepreneur, or somebody, it's
Mm,
the art of comparison is going to kill your greatness. And I often say
absolutely.
to sales teams, the person you're competing with is the one that's staring back at you in the mirror. That's the only person you've got to measure up against. And have you done what you
Absolutely,
said you were
Darren.
going to do? And will you
Yeah.
do and continue to do what you say you're going to do? That's the only measurement, right? So what
Yeah.
other people think of you,
Absolutely.
that will be their opinion.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
change that, but you can only change how
Yeah.
you approach things.
Yeah, it's that self-mastery. You can't change the world. You can't influence the world. You can't make the world a better place unless you make internally you a better place.
Totally, totally. So, Jason, hey, I'm conscious you've got another appointment to get to, so I greatly appreciate you coming on the
I do.
podcast. For people who are listening to this, a couple of
Pleasure.
things. One is if they'd like to connect with you, where's the best place to do that? And the second thing is when the book is now released, and when for people listening to this, the book is probably now already released. Where's the
Yeah.
best place for them to get a copy?
You'll be able to, if you're in Australia and New Zealand, you'll be able to walk into, um, I already know, well, I'm hoping, any bookstore, airport. I think the launch event is at Timmock's in the CBD, the iconic store in George Street. I've got a whole bunch of signings, but yeah, demo all the bookstore chains have already purchased it. And in Australia and New Zealand, you'll be able to get that online from Amazon and Booktopia and everywhere else. And if you're listening to it overseas, audio book, and North America and UK are 3rd of November.
Yep,
And yeah, it'll hopefully be pretty much everywhere. So reaching out to me, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can email me on, and this is without punctuation, greatness doesn't care at gmail.com.
cool. I
And
love
I
it.
will happily talk to anyone. One of the things I love is the meaning that this brings. There's not a week that goes by that someone in the world doesn't reach out and say, "Hey, I read your book and I went away and achieved this and did this and it's changed my life." And every single time I hear that, it just fills me with joy and meaning. So if I heard it 50 or 100 or whatever times, it's a special thing. That's one thing I truly love about my life is being able to make a difference and help people because I've
Brilliant.
been pretty fortunate.
Love it. Mate, so thank you so much for being on the
My
podcast.
pleasure.
Thank you for
Absolute pleasure.
sharing bits of your story, but also some key components of the book, Greatness Doesn't Care. And I've taken a lot out of what you've talked about today that is going to be helping me in my journey, but I'm sure people listening to this will be in the same boat. So once again, Jason
Thank
Dunn, thank
you.
you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.